Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Jordan's Journey podcast, where we talk to real people with real lives, with real testimonies, and we have a special guest with us here today. Introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, what you do, where you're from, all that good stuff.
So I'm extremely nervous. So if
Don't be
I stumble,
nervous. Do not be nervous. Like, this is just a conversation. And I know that someone is going to be blessed from hearing your story, whatever God leads you to share. And that's the whole point of it, because the Bible tells us that we overcome by the words of our testimony. And so that's the whole point of this podcast. Do not be nervous. I'm going to try to help you, warm up a little bit.
Okay.
But go ahead, introduce yourself.
So my name is Gabriel Walker, and I do like to make it a point to include my middle name because I know I am a reflection of the shoulders that I'm standing on.
Okay.
And my middle name I get from my grandmother. That's her first name.
I love that.
And so
I love
I'm
that. A
definitely
proud middle name passed down. I love that.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up. I say I'm from the north side, but I really also say that I'm a city, separate from what's the media has framed the city girl as.
Right.
I am proud to be a woman from the city.
Yeah. So you're saying like you're from the city, but not a city girl, because we want to be clear.
Well, I am a city girl, but I like to redefine almost what what it means to be a city girl.
Okay. So what's your redefinition of it?
My redefinition is a woman being unapologetically herself. Growing up in, I'll say, in spaces where we can maneuver any type of room.
Yes.
Because sorry, I'm nervous.
No, you're good. Like, you can step in any room and you can be who you are, be confident in who you are. And I feel like the city, something about living in the city that does that gives you just like that. I don't know if it's the earth factor or just like the factor where you can just show up and you can adapt and people love you. Now, I was raised in the suburbs but grew up in the city. So I had a little bit of both. And I felt like it's a good mixture. Right. Like a little sweet and sour.
Right. I've always been exposed to different environments as well. Just because my mom had me when she was 18 and my grandma was like, you're still going to school. So she literally had me on her Thanksgiving break. I was born on Thanksgiving.
Wow.
She would stand at a dorm, came home, had me. And so I grew up, it was with my mom and my grandmother. My grandma was a college professor. So I was either going to class with my mom or going to work with my mom or going to class with my grandmother. And so I was like on both sides. So I had an appreciation for being a student, but also for teachers as well. I've always had that.
How was growing up with your mom, going to school with her, like just seeing her continue and persevere? How has that affected you as an adult now?
I'll say it is truly a blessing to witness a woman be pushed to her limits, and for me to be so young and understand what some of the things that I was young, but I knew some of the things that she was coming up against because she always talked to me. Sometimes a little too much.
Yeah.
But it helped me. It helped me.
For sure. How did it help
have more of an appreciation for everything that she does for me. Even as I think I appreciate me and my mom's relationship because I feel like one day our story is going to help many other mothers and daughters. I feel like people don't talk enough about how it is to be a young mother raising another, especially a young woman. And when you get to that point of time where, this is your oldest and your first teenager, your first young adult, and what that looks like and how that relationship changes. And how it can be intimidating to another, you don't have that intergenerational gap isn't so large.
Right. So how is that? Is she like a friend?
No.
Oh, okay.
She's so she can be a friend,
like in some aspects.
But I think my mom holds on to like the old school type of. So she's young, but she battles with knowing how to have a relationship with her growing children. It just looks different.
The relationship does change because you're no longer a child. You become a young adult, then an adult, and it's no longer you're no longer telling your children what to do. You're recommending things,
right.
And so it changes.
Right.
And so, would you say you and your mom have a good relationship overall?
I think we have an evolving relationship.
What does evolving look like?
Having an appreciation for, first and foremost, our relationships, who we are in each other's lives.
Yeah.
That God chose you to be my mother. God chose me to be your daughter for a reason.
Yeah.
And so, first and foremost, having that appreciation for the role that we take place in each other's life. When she used to tell me before that, oh, you only get one mom, when we used to get into it, and she would always use that. And I'm like, you only get one me too.
Right, right.
And so I had to really learn as a young woman what it looks. I had to heal myself.
Yeah.
So that I can be
appreciate her.
So that I could be a woman that is not a reflection of my hurt, my pain, and the trauma that I feel that I have,
Yes.
that I've had, but to have a growing and adult relationship. You can't have an evolving relationship
without healing.
Because you can't always get that from the person. So you have to be able to find out what it looks like to do that for yourself.
Yeah, I did another podcast episode, and she was saying one of the things that changed her life was not being okay with not getting an apology from people. Just being okay. Like, I'm healed. I'm working on myself. I forgave you, and that's enough.
Right.
You changing, you growing, evolving, and working on yourself, growing closer to God, that's enough. Yes. Because then you realize, some people may never change. And you can't control whether or not people choose to apologize. You can't control people's growth if they're even evolving. So all you can do is control yourself.
And when people say that, it was really hard for me at first.
What was hard about it?
I had a really rough, I would say, adolescence. It was really rocky when, in between the ages of 15 to, I would say 18.
What made it rocky?
My mom's relationship and I was terrible. She didn't know how to grow with me, and so I was questioning her intentions because she wasn't handling me in a way that made me feel okay. It made me feel like she's a safe space, and she had made herself a safe place for me as a child when she was asking me questions like, oh, do you have a boyfriend, or do you like boys, and stuff like that. And I was so uncomfortable having that conversation, but when I did get my first boyfriend, the first person I told was my mom.
Okay.
And it was super innocent.
Yeah.
But it was because she had created that safe space for me. Oh. And so once I got older, and now, I have a more serious boyfriend now. It's no longer just like, oh, you're just...
Playtime's over.
Playtime's over. Like, you actually need to have some of those real discussions about what it means to be in a relationship, and also teaching you how to protect yourself, because there's levels to relationships. You don't need to be in a super serious relationship as a teenager. Right. But because I didn't have that guidance in my relationship from my mom, I received it from other places, which ended up being my friends or even his mom and his sister.
Let me ask you this. How would you have wanted your mom to come to you and talk to you about it? Because, sometimes they just don't know how to bring it up. Or they don't even know if we're ready.
Right.
Is this too soon? And I know for me, I talk to my son early about sex and things because he's a young man. And it's like, we're going to keep it real. And if you don't hear from me, you're going to hear from they're going to see it at school and everything.
Absolutely.
And, I was a young mom myself, so I can very much relate. to what you're saying. But he's still a young man. He's not an adult yet, you know, considered a young adult. So I'm curious to know what he's going to say. But how would you have wanted her to come to you? Like, what would have been a way that you have received that and you felt safe?
So she knew that I had a boyfriend that was, of course, more serious. This is when I was 15 at the time. Mm-hmm. This couple months before I turned 16.
Yeah.
So when I lost my virginity, I went to her and I told her. And because still holding on to that, you know, the idea of the safe space that I had as a kid, I still I wanted to hold on to that. I wanted that to still exist. And so I kind of was testing it. Okay. Even though I knew that how our relationship wasn't reflecting that. Right. But I tried. So I brought it up I told her I had, this is funny, I had ingrown hairs, but thought it was something else. Okay. Because I was scared. I ended up being with this person for 5 years after, so it was a very serious relationship. Yeah. And so it was a great opportunity for my mom to teach me a lot of things. Right. And so this is an opportunity. This is one of the times I came to her, told her, and she was very judgmental without saying anything. She was just like, well, did you use protection? Well, you should be using protection. And she wasn't trying to be like nasty about it, but that's how it came across to me. Yeah. And so and then when we got into our first argument after that, she threw it in my face. And so that instantly shut me down. And from that moving forward, our relationship was very hostile, distrustful, because I was hurt at times when I came to you and I tried to talk to you, and instead of having a friend in you, because even though your mom, your parents, you're not put in our lives to be our friends, we should definitely have a friend in you, because if we don't have a friend in you, how do we even know how to be friends to ourselves? Yeah, it's just like because some people have problems with like, oh, I'm not friends with my kids, you know, and I understand there is a certain level of respect that your children should have for you. That is biblical. But at the same time, you want them to feel comfortable with coming to you when they have questions, when they have problems, when they have concerns. Because if they can't feel comfortable coming to you, they're going to go to somebody else. They're going to find it somewhere else. Absolutely. And so how do parents create that safe space for their children to come to them and say, Mom, I'm curious about sex. Mom, I'm curious about smoking weed, drinking, you know, all the things of the world, because we're not going to sit here and act like it's not out there or the kids are not privy to it. And yes, you can, you know, raise your kids up in a certain environment, but as they grow older, they're going to be exposed to certain things, and you want to prepare them. You don't want them to just be oblivious. So how do you create that safe space? I would say by initiating the conversation. Yeah. In the right setting. In front of, with both parents that's not the appropriate setting. So definitely understand, if you understand the relationships that you all have, be mindful of when you're having that conversation. The best time is not to have it when you're already upset with each other either. It's definitely something you have to be super intentional about. When we're saying create a space, we're talking about literally, even if you need to physically be in a certain room that makes you feel more comfortable, that all of those things matter. All of it. Because you need to be comfortable too, also, with being uncomfortable in that conversation at some point. But here's the thing, you have to have uncomfortable conversations. That's just in life. In any relationship, with mother, daughter, parents, relationships, you're going to have uncomfortable conversations to grow, to mature. And so prepare yourself for it now. So this is our theme question, which I ask to every guest that comes on the podcast, which is, when did you come to develop your own relationship with God? What happened? And take us back to that day. I love that. So it was really deep for me. This will be my first time speaking publicly about it. But I wanted to kill myself. Not even wanted to. I attempted to. And when it didn't work, I was extremely upset. I was hurt. And it hurt me that I was so hurt about me being alive. And in that same time, like I'm thinking about it now, it's just so powerful. God's so good. I was in the ICU for 2 weeks because of that. And I couldn't talk. The doctors couldn't explain it. They ran so many tests, and like they knew that I couldn't talk because when they tried to make me talk, and when I tried to even open my mouth, my heart rate would instantly start shooting up to the point that they would stop it. And so, God had me be silent. God had me be silent.
How long were you silent for?
2 weeks.
That's a long time.
It wasn't until a few months later when I started to go into therapy, they actually had a term for it.
What was it called?
I don't remember. I have to get that because I should know it. But she basically explained that my nervous system shut down.
Oh, wow.
That I had been going through so many traumatic experiences without any type of outlet.
Oh, my.
That was the last thing that just like shut something in my system down. Like it wasn't functioning.
So you can internally hold things in, and that can cause you to be sick.
Yes.
If you don't have a proper outlet to release.
Yes. And I knew then, after that, my cousin Shauna, she always has planted a seed of, and she calls me her mini-me. And so I've always admired how she carried herself and even how she's glorified God. And for her to be one of the younger cousins in my family, she's definitely the only one that I've seen that always gives God her praises. And so somewhere in that journey, before it led up to that point, I used to go to this park and I would just listen to gospel music and cry. And I would talk to God and just ask for relief on my heart. I didn't know how to really pray at that time. I would just ask for some relief in some form, almost kind of even blaming God for probably how I'm feeling, but asking for relief in the same breath. And so that 2 weeks, I knew God was real. Even it wasn't me being, surviving that accident that showed me how real God was. It was me being able to go to school. A year later, I had been, because of that accident, I was homebound the entire year. So I hadn't.
Were you still in high school, middle, what?
It's in high school. This is my senior year.
This
is my junior year going into my senior year. So my senior year of high school, somebody who I never really worked to my potential and I could still get like a 3.0. And even getting a 2.8 for me was just like, that was low for me, but school had never inspired me in a way of like working to your potential, what that can really do for you.
Right.
So for me to go for a year, not being able to be on my phone, a computer, do nothing to overwork my brain. I couldn't even do my homework for more than an hour a day.
And that was because of?
My concussion was so severe.
Wow. So you had a concussion.
Yeah, I had a very severe concussion. Sorry. I skipped over that part. I had a severe concussion that had me homebound for the entire year because in between my teachers not following my accommodations and that causing more stress, and I started having panic attacks in school. My mom had to get an attorney because it was that real. And at that point, they were just like, take her out. So I was homebound for the year. I met with my teacher. I was completely out of school from October to December. I went back homebound in January, and so I didn't even I wasn't even doing work for a year completely for an hour. Like there was a point in time I missed months.
Wow.
And so with all of this, I still went to school. The week of August 12th, I went to my freshman year in college, Morgan State University. I just kept having in my head, hit the ground running, hit the ground running, hit the ground running. And my experience in college, me even being able to go to college, is what showed me how real God is. Because this life here in Pittsburgh, even now, it depresses me so much because of what we're constantly reminded of. We don't see enough reflection of ourselves. We're not celebrated enough here. We come up against a lot of hardships, it just for basic necessities. And they're just being a Black person in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, can be very, very tough. And so because I had that experience in college, God opened up my mind to just see a whole nother world, a whole nother life for myself. I put myself out there, like, for the first time in life. I've always been friendly, but I'm walking through campus. I made so many friends by just people complimenting me because I was always smiling. But they don't know, for a while, I didn't even want to live anymore.
Wow.
Or feel like it was worth it. And so for me to be living this life now that I never imagined myself even being in, and it was just
life changing.
God continuously, and me being able to push myself, praying for God to give me the discernment to know when I'm pushing beyond my limits versus, me just needing a break. Because mentally, I still have to be cognizant that I'm recovering from a concussion. So that was even a battle in itself, is knowing the difference between when I'm really tired or physically tired versus I just need a break because I'm just a college student.
Right.
That was another battle in itself for me during college.
Like understanding the difference.
God literally led me through all of that. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for.
Wow. So you wanted to commit suicide. Oh, you tried. You attempted and it failed. And so you were in a concussion. And from the concussion, you were at home. You were homebound for the entire year. And what were you doing that entire year while you were at home?
I was very depressed. At a point in time, I stopped sleeping. From December to January, I had completely stopped sleeping. So in December, I was still sleeping for, I may sleep like maybe two hours a day. By January, I was sleeping no more than 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
So there were some days I was not going to sleep, and will never forget crying on the phone with my grandmother, how frustrated I was that I couldn't sleep. I just wanted a break I remember saying, I just need a break from the world, because it was that severe. Like, I was not sleeping. And it wasn't until February when they gave me some medication that I started to sleep again. And I also started intensive therapy, and I got myself into that. I caught the bus all the way from the north side to Western Site, actually, bawling my eyes out the entire time on the bus, like nonstop, uncontrollably, just crying, because even in that time, my mom, she didn't mean any harm, but she didn't know how to be there for me. And so instead of her, for a week, they were going to try to get me back into school to see for half days and see how that worked. But I'm not sleeping. And so she got frustrated with me not being ready for school while I was literally on the phone with my grandma crying about, I'll never forget this day, because that's the day I was just like, nobody around me knows how to help me. I got to do something about this. And I didn't know if Western Site was the answer, but I knew something wasn't right in my mind, and that nobody around me knew how to help me. And so I just did where I guess God led me to, because intensive therapy, I live by therapy to this day. Intensive therapy saved my life.
So what's the difference between regular therapy and intensive therapy?
I was also working 2:30 to 11 o'clock at for the Allegheny Health Network. So my intensive therapy was every day before I went to work.
Oh, that's what made it intensive, because it was every day.
It was every day, and it was for 4 hours.
Oh, 4 hours.
So you had a portion of group therapy, a portion to meet with a psychiatrist, and a portion to meet with individual therapy.
So how did that change your life?
Being in a room, I was the youngest person in the room in those group sessions.
Right.
And so I'm talking amongst people who are having the same issues as me, and some of them may be old enough to be my mom. And so that space of just having empathy and validation, but also redirection, was powerful. It was very powerful.
I'm curious to know, with you battling, that was an attack. That wasn't an attack like on your mind, almost like spiritual warfare you fought through. But God, you were protected. Obviously, you're still here, because even when you tried to take yourself out, it didn't work. So you were still protected. And so I'm curious to know how you just mustered up the energy to even still go to college, after dealing with all that.
Right. So I didn't want to go. I was actually looking for public housing, because at this time, me and my family, I told you my family, my grandma has her own battles. And so she's always been there for everybody, but this was a period of time that she needed to take time for herself, so she wasn't as, into what was going on with me and my mom and myself.
Right.
Like how I wasn't in the house and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to go to school. I was looking for public housing. Yeah. I was staying with friends. My grandma crying to me. She is now the matriarch of our family, since my granny and other elders have passed. My granny was not passed when she was 92. That's her mom. She was the last elder of her siblings to pass. And so now with my grandma's older cousins passing, my grandma's now the elder. And she's very strong. She's a first generation student in our family. She's just always been this champion. I've always seen her. It's one of my superhero. Beautiful. And so when she cried to me, I don't even think I've seen her cry at funerals. So when she broke down crying to me, asking me to trust them enough to even just at least trust her, that she's going to make sure that my mom got me, and to please go to school, Like, she was just like, everything that I have done, especially for you, was so that you can keep it going. And it's like she didn't say keep so that you can keep it going directly, but I know
that's what
God got something on my life. Yeah. Through my grandma. He's used my grandma to make sure that I become who I need to. So when she cried to me and she told me to trust her, I trusted her.
That's powerful, because there are people that God has placed in our lives that we may not even know that are there to push us into destiny, to push us to keep going, to push us to still become. Because, when God has chosen you and set you apart, life can be hard.
Yes, I feel like that now.
Yeah, life can be hard. And it's like, God, what is this? And then somebody comes along and it's like, no, you got this.
Right.
Like, he brings people into your corner and they're like your champions.
Right.
Was that what your grandma was for you?
Absolutely. And God has also placed strangers in my life to do exactly what I needed at the times that I've needed it. Like, literally, I'll never forget, I was walking. This is at the time I was living with a friend, and at this point, I'm so broke that I didn't, I only had $20. And so I was holding on to my $20, because this is before. So because of my accident, not only was I homebound because of my concussion, but I was physically injured. So I couldn't walk for that long before my knees would start to swell.
So you had to learn how to walk?
Oh, yeah. Before I had to learn how to walk again before I got out the hospital.
So you were in ICU?
Yeah, I was in the ICU.
So that means ICU is like near, like you almost didn't make it and you had to like relearn everything.
Yeah, I wasn't. I don't think I. Yeah, I just had to relearn everything. That's why I was in the ICU. Like, I wasn't speaking. I couldn't move either.
Did you have to learn how to talk again? Or did you just start speaking again? How did that work?
I think after the 2 weeks, I progressively started to say words.
Oh.
Like, I started to make sounds at first. Then progressively started to say. But even after I got to the hospital, like, I wasn't saying a lot. Because I would even say, like, I couldn't even chew gum because my jaw would start to hurt.
I think it's just so amazing how even when we try to take ourselves out or the spirit of death comes upon us and like God is like, nope. Like you don't even have that much control over your life. Like your destiny is mine. Like I have a plan for you to prosper you, not to harm you. And even when you try to take yourself, it's like, nope.
Right.
Not this one. Because there are people who try and have succeeded.
Exactly.
And so how does that make you feel? Like you're still hurt? And then you're sharing your testimony. And when I say you were referred to me, he said, I have someone who would be a great guest on the podcast. And I'm like, okay. Like, ask her if she wants to come on. And I mean, wow. And the fact that you're even here and able to share that, how does that make you feel?
I'm grateful that God loves me that much.
Yes.
That I can even keep pushing myself to see what he has in store for me, because I know it's not for me, it's for his people. And even the work that I do in my life, everything is dedicated to uplifting people, our people.
Yes.
And so for God to give me the opportunity to continue doing that, I know it's not for me. It's for the extensions that I have onto my life and the extensions that they have onto their life too. There's a bigger picture to it all.
Absolutely.
So it's overwhelming sometimes, like you said, because life can be rough and then you're just like, I got to keep going. But when you have faith and that relationship with God, and you talk, I got to stay locked in with him, because sometimes I'm like, this ain't making no sense.
How do you stay locked in?
I talk to him like he's my friend.
Yeah.
I was in I was in a terrible state a few months ago. I had experienced another concussion, but I was also just in a super stressful it was not a great situation at all.
Yeah.
And in that time, I'm calling the concussion clinic and I'm explaining, like, hey, I just want to get my head checked out, make sure it's not a severe concussion, because I remember where it put me last time. And just that mental state. And so I was breaking down, crying on the phone. I'm telling this lady how, I'm trying, but it's like I'm working for something that I can't see. And so in moments like this, it just doesn't feel like I have enough to keep going. And this woman broke down on the phone with me. She's like breaking down. She said her daughter is the same age as me, and for me to have so much pain it's making me emotional, because she was so affected by the pain that I had on my heart. Wow. That's just moments like that. That's what God does for me. He puts people that you would never expect.
Just a lady on the phone.
That texts me to this day. She texts me to this day. She made sure she stayed in contact. She asked me, can I please take your number? Wow. To this day, she checks on me. She just makes sure that I'm feeling okay. And if I need somebody, she's like, I don't care if you feel like nobody in this world cares. I care. And this is a woman who never even seen my face. But I've had interactions like that throughout this journey since I feel like I've committed myself to seeing God. Yes. He has proven himself in so many ways. So many ways. Some ways I know, when they say like, oh, we're undeserving. I used to feel like, oh, well, why are we undeserving? If he died for us, why are we undeserving? But because we go through, as humans, as flesh, we are imperfect. Our feelings are up and down. We get affected by our environments, and that's the beautiful thing about God's love is it's unconditional, and that we have the power to repent.
Yes.
And it does make you feel like, why can't I do that for somebody else? If he can do it for me, if he's done this, if he saved me this many times, there's no way a God isn't real. And how dare I not be willing to show somebody that same grace? It doesn't have to be on the same scale. I'm not God.
That's right.
But
that's right.
How dare I not be willing to show grace when I know where I've been at different points in my life, and God didn't hold that against me.
That's good. So you went to school, and you say that's like when you found God, really.
That's when I
built a relationship.
That's when I fully committed myself to trusting God, because I wouldn't have went to school.
Right.
It's like trusting my grandma was like a form of trusting God.
Yeah,
as well.
God sent her. She was the vessel. So God sent her, and she said, trust me. And that was trusting God, taking that leap of faith. And you went to school, and it was like a whole new world for you.
It changed my life. Like, to this day, sometimes I get emotional thinking about what school did for me. I tell people all the time, I would not be the person I was today if I did not go to school. And people who knew me growing up, they think, oh, well, you might have always had something. They don't know. I could have been a whole different person because of my trauma. Whole different person.
Yeah. And
because we are our flesh and we're imperfect, it wouldn't have been my mom's fault. It wouldn't have been my grandma's fault.
Yeah.
Things would have been valid, but that was on me.
Yeah.
And so being willing to accept God in your heart is major. It's major. And that's something you say, how did I start my journey?
Going to
being
school.
Willing.
Yeah.
Being willing.
And then you trusted God, and then he showed you. Because you trusted me, because you were obedient, I'm going to show you. And then it was like a life-changing experience. Well, what was life-changing about it?
One, like you said, I love that you made it a point to frame that my grandma was a vessel.
Yeah. Because
I think I didn't know before what vessels were. And I know now that God will use someone as a vessel if he knows that that's the only way that he can reach you.
Oh, he will find you at your lowest point, and he will use the tree, the donkey, the Bible says, to speak to you, to get a message, to his children.
Right.
Yeah.
So understanding that God can use people that way, first and foremost, is what changed, I think, my perspective.
Yeah.
Because now when I'm meeting people, I'm no longer looking at,
just them as a human.
As a human. I'm looking at your spirit. Like, there might be something I'm supposed to get from your spirit.
Absolutely.
So that changed my experience. They told me not to click up. When I got to school, I got to know everybody. I got to know everybody, like, to the point people either called me Pittsburgh or they called me by my name, Gabby, because they knew who I was, because I was just proud to be there.
Wow.
So, yeah, I knew so many, like, to the point that when my mom and my grandma came, but at the end of September, I had left middle of August, beginning of August. When I came at the end of September for Parents Week, they're like, how do you know? How do all these people know you already? But I was I was embracing my experience. I wasn't taking advantage of every moment. If I didn't have a group of friends, like I had a group of friends that I had met freshman week, they didn't want to do any of the things that I did. Like to do any of the things that everybody else was doing too. And so I'm just like, and I mean, talking about just going to parties and things like that. Like it was different for them because they weren't, like, I'm like a city girl. So always I'm getting on the bus at middle school, things like we're used to maneuvering around in different spaces. The group of girls who I had met, they weren't. They were all from the suburbs, basically.
Wow.
And so I had to get comfortable with doing my own thing, and God using my auntie as a vessel, someone who helped raise me. She happened to call me when all of this is going on, when all of this confusion and me realizing, I don't have anybody to go with. Now it's starting to make me feel homesick. And this is still in the first week of me actually leaving for school. My auntie calls me. Literally, the party, like, she's always been the lit auntie, the one auntie that teaches you how to have fun and stuff like that. Right. So for her to call me and say exactly what I needed to hear, Don't be scared to go out and have fun by yourself.
Mm.
You know, I do that all the time. You know how many experiences that you can miss out with waiting around for other people? So for the rest of my college years, I never waited around on nobody. If you don't want to do it, I'm gonna go by myself, and that's how I met so many people.
And there's power in being by yourself too. You know, I believe in community. You know, I believe in certain friendships, but there is also power in being by yourself. And the Bible also says, be careful who you entertain, because you could be entertaining an angel. And so that means that angels can come in human flesh form, and you may not even know who you're talking to, but they just said exactly what you needed to hear. Mm-hmm. You know, whether you know them or not, or they just pop up out of nowhere. Because I've heard stories of people, getting a flat tire or running out of gas, and then in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden a car pulls up, and it's like, do you need some help? And they go get a tire or get the gas and take them on, just like stories. And you don't have any phone, you don't have any contact, you're just by yourself, and then someone pulls up. That's God.
I had so my car broke down, and I had a flat tire at 3 a.m. in Baltimore. Downtown Baltimore too.
Wow.
Yeah, a classmate, somebody that's the same year as me, same classification as me, pulled up behind me.
Yeah.
I didn't have AAA or anything.
You didn't call them?
No, I didn't call them. I wasn't even close enough with him that I would have thought to call
right.
them. And so, yeah, like you said, God He's went out his way to show off in my life.
Yeah, because it's like, you may not know everybody, but God said, I know everybody, and I will send people, no matter where you are in the world. And so what would you want people to take away from your story, from your testimony? Because, girl, you got a testimony. Okay, if you didn't know.
I'll say, if you truly want to find peace in your life, and if you trust to find that in God, or if you're willing to see that, to have to find that in God, you have to have an open heart, not just for yourself, but for every experience that life may give you. God is God will never forsake you. God will never put you through anything in vain. There's always a reason for everything. And so if you are stuck on confused on why something has happened to you, instead of figuring it out, trying to drive yourself crazy, trying to overthink, instead of calling all your friends who their flesh,
they don't know.
They're just going to give you what they think. Nobody actually knows but the one.
But the one.
Trust in God.
Yeah. And you said having an open heart. I love that. What does an open heart look like? And we're done.
Having an open heart.
To you. Because you had to have that to receive what you received, the blessing that you received. So what did that look like for you?
You have to be willing.
Yeah.
It doesn't always feel good.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody might literally be getting on your nerves, but they're saying something. If they're saying something that you need to hear, don't always be so quick to respond. Don't always be so quick to shut down. Don't be so quick to revert to what your flesh wants.
Yeah.
Be willing. Having an open heart is you going against what your flesh may want, and doing what you may need.
I think that's a great point to end it there. Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you.
For being brave, to sharing your story. I know your story is going to help so many people. You're not the only one that has battled through that, who has battled through suicidal thoughts. So I'm just blessed that you even decided to come and share today. And thank you, family, for tuning in. Jordan's Journey podcast is available on all podcast platforms. Leave us a review. Make sure you listen on Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. That really helps us out a lot. And we'll see you in our next episode. God loves you so much, and so do I. Bye.